As we have already completed Robert Browning's poem, so now we will move on to Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, which is our next unit. But before studying about author or reading the poem, we should be familiar with the age and socio-political conditions of the age. As T.S. Eliot is a modern age poet and critic, we will study modern age, which started with the reign of Edward VII after the death of Queen Victoria in 1901 and extended up to 1950s. Our first and most important point is urbanization and its impacts. As you can clearly see in the graph, urbanization started in 1800s, but after 1900 it rapidly increased. It was basically an era of rapid changes in every sphere of the life. By the last decade of 19th century, there was a complete breakdown of the agrarian way of life and economy. It meant the end of rural England and the increasing urbanization of the country. Industrialization and urbanization brought in their wake their own problems. There have risen problems like the problem of overcrowding, housing shortage, a significant increase in vice and crime, fall in the standards of sexual morality, and a rapidly increasing ugliness. The atmosphere has increasingly grown more and more smoky and noisy, and city slums raise their ugly heads on all sides. There has been a loosening in sex taboos, for public opinion does not operate as a check in a crowded city. Early 20th century poetry vividly reflects all these effects of industrialization. Envy and boredom of city life and its agonizing loneliness are all brought out by poems like The Wasteland. However, the change has been beneficial in one respect at least. It has brought about a more healthy pattern in social relations. The Victorian ethics of competition and money relationship has given place to a new concept of social responsibility and social morality. The new age has seen the emergence of the concept of welfare state. The society or the state is now held responsible for education, health, and well-being of the individual. Divorce today carries no moral stigma comparable to that of exploiting the poor and or of ill-treating a child. The sphere of social morality in terms of public good has expanded at the expense of private morality. Economy driven by desire rather than need. Next point. The late 19th century also sees the development of new forms of mass consumption, departmental stores, catalog sales, illustrated magazines, which seamlessly integrate consumer advice, pictures, and advertising. By 1900, abundance, that is an economy driven by desire rather than need, was something which needed theorizing in the work of a lot of economists, and then the problem of overconsumption, including overeating, emerged. Ultimately, it became an economy of waste, excess, and mass consumption. From here, we are going to pick up our next point, Second Industrial Revolution, which basically fulfilled the motto of mass consumption by mass production. After First Industrial Revolution in 1820s, American manufacturers developed mass production techniques, standardization, advertising, and credit on international scale. In the period of what is often called Second Industrial Revolution in 1870s to 1920, new technological developments produce a shift to mass production. Focus on poor and middle class. In an era of industries, the population of middle class grows faster as a shift from poor class and beginning of 20th century marked the end of supremacy of middle class. The poor were no helpless creatures. They became the raw material of realistic drama and novels. The spirit of questioning. The century ushered in an era of moral uncertainty. The rise of scientific spirit and rationalism led to a questioning of accepted social beliefs convention, and traditions. In matter of religion, it gave rise to skepticism. No doubt there was much questioning, much criticism of traditional belief in Victorian era also. But the Victorian writer was not critical of very fundamentals of the very basis of his social and moral order. On the whole, his attitude was one of acceptance. Like Deacon and Thackeray, they were both critical writers, but they criticized only a few evils inherent in their social system. Basically, they accepted their way of life and were proud of it. But by the end of century, we see a lot of writers who were criticizing the very basis of the existing social, economic, and moral system. The wholesale criticism of the existing order from different angle and point of view, often opposite and contradictory, has increased. The perplexity of the common man baffled and at bay. They does not know what to accept and what to reject. Next, changing pattern of relations. As a result of the teaching of modern psychology, man is no longer considered as self-responsible or rational in his behavior. The theory of the Oedipus complex has had a profound impact on private and family relationships. Jealousies are recognized where no such imputations would have been made previously. Hamlet has been interpreted by Eliot in terms of the Oedipus complex. It is the theme of one of D.H. Lawrence's major novel, and mothers are supposed to be jealous of their daughter-in-laws. Sexual renunciation has ceased to be a theme of literature. Interest in sex perversion has grown, and there is a free and frank discussion of sex. Victorian taboos are no longer operative. There is a breakup of old authoritarian parent in family relationships. The assessment of the relative roles of relation has changed. Woman has come to her own, and the notion of male superiority has suffered a serious blow. Revolt against authority. The First World War further strained the authoritarian pattern of family relationships and increased tension and frustration. The reaction of the post-war world has been to suspect all manifestations of authority. It may be called an era of revolt against authority, political and religious skepticism. General disillusionment, cynicism, irony, etc. have become the order of the day. The dictum, power corrupts, is a symbol of the revolt of post-war generation. The temper of the age is anti-heroic, and action and success in a worldly sense have become questionable values. Interest has shifted from the extrovert to the introvert. Neurosis and spiritual gloom are widespread. Economic depression, unemployment, overpopulation have increased the hardship of life and caused stress and strain and nervous breakdowns. Collapse of old values and ideals. Though there has been an occasional revival of Christianity even in the orthodox form, as in the works of T.S. Eliot and Graham Greene, the 20th century, under the impact of science and rationalism, has witnessed a gradual weakening of religious faith. Religious controversies no longer exercise any significant influence on public issues. Moral and ethical values are no longer regarded as absolute philosophy and metaphysics. Instead of concerning themselves with the nature of God, shown a keen interest in the study of nature of man. To Freud, man is a biological phenomena, a creature of instinct and impulses. To Marxist, he is an outcome of economics and social forces. The pessimism and despair of the age is seen in the picture of man. Gone are the days of Victorian optimism when man was regarded as essentially rational, acting in his best interest, which his reason was supposed to teach him, were identical with social good. The same perplexity and uncertainty is to be seen in the field of political theory. Socialism and internationalism have replaced the old Victorian notion of supremacy of the whites. The entire gamut of relation has undergone a revolutionary change. Nationalism is no longer regarded as enough, and imperialism has come in for great deal of Criticism. The relation between the nation of world must be based on equality and mutual respect and not on the old basis of political subjugation and imperial supremacy. The empire instead of remaining a matter of pride and as in the days of Kipling and Tennyson is looked down upon with a sense of guilt. Art for life's sake. In the modern age, the doctrine of art for art's sake was rejected. The doctrine for art for life's sake was established. Everybody in this age was falling in the trap of materialism, and so were writers, painters, and other artists. Now, instead of expressing what they feel, they started to share. They started to share and show what consumer wants to see and buy. Impact of two world wars. We can easily notice the impact of two world wars on literature of modern age. After the First World War, depression, want and unemployment increased. The League of Nations was set up to establish world peace. In spite of this attempt, the Second World War broke out. England also suffered a great loss. After that, a large number of anti war books were written. These books exposed the futility and hollowness of war. Next, coming on to radio and cinema. In the modern age, radio, cinema show great impact on literature. The radio brought literature into the home. It opened an entirely new field for authors. Cinema also played an important role. The inventions of locomotive, telegraphy, rapid and cheap intercommunication resulted in an intellectual revolution. Now, printing was multiplied and cheapened. Decline in quality. The modern age has witnessed a phenomenal rise in literacy. Cheap books, magazine, paper, etc. have been pouring out in their tens of thousands, with the result that the spread of education has been almost universal. However, there has been a visible decline in quality. The old culture of the people, expressed in folk songs, dance, rusting craft, etc., has been destroyed. The cinema, the radio, the popular literature full of crime and or love stories have exploited the people for commercial purpose. There has been an increase in vulgarity, brutality and coarseness. Human relationships have been coerced and cheapened. Man has become incapable of finer and subtle emotional responses. Further, the cinema, the television and the cheap novel have fostered a kind of daydreaming. It has become a century of revolt of youth. Vigorous experiments are being made in the field of music and other fine arts and literature, but this is a symptom of breakdown of cultural continuity rather than of cultural vigor. Modern literature representing the age. Generally speaking, the modern writer is intentionally conscious of his social milieu and does not fail to reflect in his works. And we will see this thing also in the wasteland. So from tomorrow we will start a poem. So today you have to revise all these